Hi everybody, welcome back. Today in our lecture series we're going to be covering listening, critical thinking, and logical fallacies. Just like all of our lectures, they're going to be broken up into 3 different parts so you can watch them at whatever pace you would like. Each one of these things is a skill that can directly impact our ability to communicate effectively as well as do public speaking or presentations. If you've never thought about listening as a skill, today hopefully you'll learn some different ways to become a better listener or improve those listening skills in any environment. We will be going over critical thinking. Critical thinking, of course, is one of those things that is hard to pin down what it is. So hopefully, again, after the lecture, you'll have a better, more solidified understanding of what critical thinking is and how to be a good critical thinker, as well as have some skills to evaluate different types of information. And then, of course, we'll go over some logical fallacies, and this will hopefully give you some skills for analyzing different types of information, which is really, really important. But first and foremost, we're talking about listening. So listening is one of those skills that, at least in my life, most people don't often practice. We don't really think about it as a skill, but it's something that, especially in this really advanced society with so much technology and so many things to distract us, it's really, really important that we work to improve those listening skills, to be more present, to be more focused, right? And those are things that we can do. The first thing I would like for you to do is start to think about what is the difference between hearing versus listening. If you can think about maybe an argument you had with a parent growing up, or maybe with a child of your own, and they say, I heard you. Well, yes, right, you heard me, but were you listening? They're 2 different things, and what I'd like for you to do is just take a second, pause the video, and think about what is the difference between hearing and listening. And we're going to come back to that question here in just a minute. So go ahead and pause the video now, and then when you come back, we'll jump into the preview. All right, so with the lecture preview, today we're going to be going over the different types of listening, the 3 A's of listening: skills for enhancing listening, listening to enhance public speaking, and then we'll get into some audience analysis, which is all very, very useful for public speaking, but also for our communication skills. So I told you we'd come back to this idea of hearing versus listening. So what I'd like for you to do now is pause the video, take a second, and really write down, how do you determine what is hearing versus what is listening, and then provide an example just for yourself. Put yourself in a situation where maybe you could have been a better listener, and think about some of the context, some of the different variables at play, some of the things maybe you could have done in order to be a better listener. And then, as we work through this lecture, use that situation as your anchor. Come back to it and think about how some of the things we're talking about maybe could have impacted that particular situation. And hopefully that'll give you a really firm understanding of how we can become better listeners in a variety of different contexts or in one particular setting. So first and foremost, we want to talk about the different types of listening. And this is something that we do intuitively or inherently. We don't always think about doing it, but it's something that we want to be aware of. So we have 5 different types of listening. Number 1 is appreciative listening. Appreciative listening is the type of listening that we do when we are listening to something for joy or for pleasure. Maybe we're listening to music, or we're at the opera, or we're listening to an orchestra, or it's right after the holiday season when I'm recording this, so holiday music puts you in a particular state of being, and that is what we would consider appreciative listening. Next up, we have relational listening. Relational listening is the type of listening that we do when we are looking to engage with somebody else. We're developing a relationship, or we have a relationship. So it's more detailed listening. We are listening to that person in a more complex manner because we know them, right? It's not like we're engaging with a stranger at the grocery store. This is somebody where maybe we're having dinner with them, or having coffee, or on a date, or out with a significant other. Right? We're listening and we're really focusing on what they're saying, how they're saying it, focusing on them. We then have empathic or therapeutic listening. This is like what a therapist would do, aka therapeutic listening. A therapist is listening hopefully in a non-judgmental way, to take in that information and assist in potentially some self-discovery. So you're not judging, you're not necessarily even really giving a lot of feedback, you're just listening and you're taking that information in and maybe providing some advice if it's warranted, but really this is just about listening to the other person. So it's not necessarily as much as of a two-way street. You're just taking that in. Maybe somebody's venting to you or they're going through a hard time and they just need somebody to talk to. That's what we're doing when we're doing empathic or therapeutic listening. Next, we have critical listening. This is where we're listening to analyze, to pick apart, to determine whether or not, somebody is right or wrong. If we're listening to a debate, or we are listening to a lecture, or listening to somebody else's conversation out at a restaurant or a coffee shop, maybe we're listening critically because we disagree with what they're saying. This is more of an analytical process. This is more of what we're going to engage in an academic setting. And last but not least, we have informational listening. This is where we're listening to just take in the information. We're not passing a judgment. We're not determining a value, good or bad, right or wrong. We're just taking that information in like a sponge. And then maybe later we'll analyze it. We'll think more critically about it. But the goal of informational listening is just to get as much information as possible. As students, we do this anytime we're listening to a lecture, a discussion, watching a video, something that relates to the information at hand for the class. We're doing informational listening. So we have the 5 different types of listening. We have appreciative, relational, therapeutic, critical, and informational. And depending on the setting, you'll be engaged in a different type of listening. So now that we can think about different contexts of where we might be doing different types of listening, or what might be appropriate for a different setting or different context, we can hopefully start to shift how we are listening in different settings. Part of how we're going to do that is by engaging with the 3 A's of listening. These are attention, attitude, and adjustment. These seem very, very surface level, like duh, right? But the thing here is that we can focus on these, and these things can be changed by us actively, purposefully. So we can be more attentive. We can pay more attention. We can put our phone on airplane mode, turn it off, set it aside, and really focus, right? We can do things to be more attentive, to be able to pay more attention. We can change the setting. So maybe you really want to talk to somebody, but it's loud in the coffee shop. You move to a different setting so that it's a little bit more quiet so that you can engage with that person on a relational level. We can adjust our attitude. As you all know, attitude makes such a big difference in how we interpret or perceive anything. If you have a negative or poor attitude going into something, you're going to be less likely to listen, regardless of the type of listening. If you don't like somebody or you don't really want to be talking to them, you're not going to be able to engage on a relational level. If you don't like a topic or a professor or a class, it's going to be very hard to engage on an informational level. If you don't know what you need to know about a topic, it's going to be really hard to engage on a critical level. Again, if you don't want to be listening, it would be really difficult to do that therapeutic listening. So shifting our attitude is something we can do. We can change the way that we're thinking about something and what we are bringing to that situation, which will enable us to be better listeners regardless of the type of listening that we're doing. And we change our attention, we change our attitude by making small, minute adjustments, by practicing being a better listener, by actively paying attention, by actively changing our attitude before we put ourselves in a situation to listen. So the 3 A's of listening are very, very simple, but they can be very powerful in how they impact your ability to listen. So the next time you are thinking about your listening skills, putting yourself in a situation or in a situation where it's hard for you to focus, hard for you to listen, think about your attention. What can you do? Think about your attitude. What can you change? And think about what adjustments you might be able to make. It will likely make a big difference in your ability to listen to whatever it is that you're trying to listen to in whatever way. Now we have 5 other little ways of enhancing listening, and these are pretty straightforward, right? These are not necessarily going to be things that you can practice per se, but you can make those adjustments. These are things that you can adjust in the 3 A's of listening. So number 1, keep an open mind. This has to do with your attitude, right? Your attention, your adjustment. You want to have an open mind depending on the type of listening that you're trying to do. Take that information in and really evaluate it. Be relational, be therapeutic, be critical, be informative, whatever you're trying to achieve. You want to identify and eliminate distractions. This is super simple. This has to do with that adjustment, right? We want to identify things that are distracting us and move them away or move ourselves away. We want to be prepared to listen. This is one of my favorite ones because as a teacher, as a professor, when students aren't prepared to listen or the class is at a particularly challenging time of the day. So say, for example, a class immediately before lunchtime, or what we might consider lunchtime. It's going to be very difficult to keep that audience engaged because my audience is not necessarily going to be as prepared to listen because we're going to be hungry. We're going to have some what we would call physiological noise impacting our ability to focus. So how do we adjust that? Hopefully, maybe we have a snack or try to limit that. We want to actively be prepared to listen, and that's easier said than done in a lot of situations. It's not always your fault, right? Number 4, we want to take notes. So this is one very simple but very important adjustment that we can make to be a better listener in any critical or informative situation, or even a therapeutic situation. A lot of therapists will take notes while they're listening and discussing with somebody. Taking notes is very, very important. You should be taking notes anytime that you are listening to gain information. So while you're watching this lecture, you should be taking notes. While you're in a lecture in class, you should be taking notes. While you're listening to a TED Talk or watching a YouTube video about something that's interesting to you, you should take some notes. It will improve your ability to retain more of that information, and it will force you to focus more. So taking notes is hugely beneficial. Fun fact, research actually shows that if you write the notes with a pen or pencil on a piece of paper or write it on something, it actually increases the amount of that information that you're going to retain versus typing it out on a tablet or a laptop or a computer. Last but not least, we want to provide nonverbal feedback. This is super, super important for communication. We want to provide eye contact, gestures, body language. These are really, really important factors that will help us listen. It will help us adjust our attitude. It will help us be more attentive. So actively provide nonverbal feedback. Make eye contact with people. Nod along. Yeah, absolutely. Lean forward, right? You want to be physically engaged with the environment, with the situation, and it will help you be a better listener. Now, we want to think about listening in a variety of contexts, in our personal lives, professional lives, academic lives, but we also want to think about public speaking and listening. This is really, really important because if you're in a public speaking class, like you likely are if you're watching this video, we have a rare opportunity to engage with our audience on a personal level, to get to know the people that we're talking to. And this gives us an advantage in writing our speeches because we know what our audience likes, what they don't like, what they might be engaged with, what they think is silly or not worthwhile. We want to listen so that we can write a speech for them. Now, speech writing is a little bit different than essay writing because in an essay we're writing for the eye, right? We're writing for our brain. It's a different cognitive process. When we're writing a speech, we're writing for the ear. We want our audience to be able to easily listen to what we have to say. That's really, really important, and it's a big change. One way to simply accomplish this is to write out a portion of your speech and then say it out loud and see how it sounds versus how it reads. Sometimes things read well or they're grammatically correct, but they sound weird when we say them. So number 1, write for the ear. Number 2, appeal to your audience. Again, this is your opportunity to say, hi, I've been listening to you, and here's what I've learned and how I think it will relate to all of you. So some ways that students do this, we do a lot of speeches on procrastination, on getting more sleep, on eating better, on exercising more, on improving student life. So we're appealing to our audience. We're saying, hey, this information is going to benefit your life in some way, and here's why you should listen. And then last but not least, we want to practice. Now, listening and public speaking, you're like, how do I practice that? Well, you can practice your public speaking, you can record it, and then you can listen, right? You can listen to yourself, but you can also practice your listening skills when you are listening to your classmates' presentations. So listening and public speaking are uniquely linked. It's very, very important that we're aware of that because we want to engage in a level of critical analysis that relates to our audience. So we've been focusing a lot on what we individually can do to improve listening skills, how we can change our attention, our attitude, what adjustments we can make, what type of listening are we trying to do. We thought about how it relates to public speaking, but now we really want to dive into this idea of writing for the ear, appealing to our audience. And we do this by engaging with information that directly relates to our audience. This is called audience analysis. There's a variety of different types of audience analysis that we'll go over here in just a moment. But the thing to be aware of, so this is your warning when it comes to audience analysis, is that it can be really useful, but it can also be really problematic. Because based on the different types of information you have access to, you're going to be making assumptions, generalizations about your audience. And then if you are unsure about those things or it's not good information, you're going to be writing your speech to appeal to an audience in an ineffective manner. So this is not a rule to live by. None of these things are. There are extra things, extra skills, extra things we can do to improve how we write our speeches for our audience. So first and foremost, we have situational analysis, and this is exactly what it sounds like. You analyze the situation. You think about the context and the setting and how that might impact your audience. So when I use that example about presenting to or lecturing to a group of students right before lunchtime, that's a situational analysis. I'm thinking about what that situation, what that setting is going to, what impact that is going to have on my audience. Are they going to be hungry? Are they going to be tired? Are they going to be able to focus? If not, what do I need to be prepared to do to make an adjustment to better present and appeal to my audience? Then we have demographic analysis. We want to think about the demographics of our audience and maybe not necessarily alter our speech to a huge degree, but we do want to be aware of some of the differences in demographics. So we'll really focus on age for this one. If you are presenting to a group of 6th graders, you're going to have to present your information in a different way than you would if you were presenting to your classmates in this college course or in your professional career, say an academic or professional conference. So the age and the expertise are going to alter how you present. But there are other demographics that you can tap into to think about. But this is one of those ones that gets a little problematic because you all of a sudden have to start making assumptions. So if you're going to do demographic analysis, do it carefully. Be very, very aware of how you go about doing that. Then we have psychological analysis. This is where you're thinking about maybe the psychological status of your audience. Where are they in a mental capacity, in a cognitive capacity? What's going on in the world? Are there things that are wildly distracting? Are they going to inhibit your ability to effectively present? So another personal example here, when we initially went online because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was teaching a class at that time, and we were all unsure about whether or not we were going to be going online or not. And in the middle of class, there was an email sent out that said, we're going to be moving online immediately. Finish up your classes for the day, and then everything else is going to be online. So obviously that was really distracting. We were able to discuss and move through the rest of that class. We only had a few minutes left in class at that point. I go on to my next class, and my class is very frazzled. They're very stressed out. One student said that they felt like they were going to vomit. So at that point, as a speaker, I'm thinking to myself, okay, can I surpass what is going on in beyond the classroom in order to make this an effective environment, an effective lecture? And I deemed that I couldn't. So we canceled class for the day and we got caught up another time. So that was a minor form of psychological analysis. We then have multicultural analysis. This is where we're thinking about the different cultural aspects that come to play with presenting and how we might lean into those or shy away from those different things depending on our audience. So, as you all know, different cultures do different things as far as communication. We sometimes use eye contact. This is a really common one. In some cultures, eye contact is seen as respectful, as expected, and in others, eye contact is disrespectful and rude. So being aware of the culture that you're presenting in, and this is a very, very challenging form of audience analysis, because how do you know what culture you're presenting to unless you go to that specific culture, right? So when you're doing a multicultural analysis, again, this is another one of those things where you want to think about, how can I use my body language? How can I use my presentation to better appeal to my audience and not do anything that's rude? So simple things to be aware of are eye contact, body language, hand gestures. Last but not least, we have topic, interest, and prior knowledge analysis. So this is where we're thinking about, what does my audience know or care about in relation to my topic? If the answer is nothing, you have to present in a different way. If the answer is a lot, you have to present to them in a different way. So ultimately, each one of these different types of audience analysis gets us to the same goal of thinking about what our audience needs from us as speakers, because public speaking is an audience-based activity. We need to be able to listen effectively, to think critically about our audience, and to write speeches that relate to our audience. In review, we've gone over the 5 different types of listening, the 3 A's of listening, so these are things that you can do to become a better listener in any environment. Skills for enhancing listening, listening to enhance our public speaking ability, so write for the ear, appeal to our audience, practice listening, practice speaking and listen. Goodness. And then last but not least, we had audience analysis. So overall, through this brief lecture, we've covered a variety of different things, but the one thing that it's important for you to take away is that listening is a skill, and listening is an audience-based activity. We need to care about that audience, whoever it is, whether it's a group or an individual person. If we want to be an effective listener, we have to care about what that audience needs in order to create an effective form of communication and an effective communication environment. That concludes our lecture on listening. We will come back and start talking about critical thinking. Take care, everybody.